amazing. There was a whole discussion of Stefan Molyneux. He has a new video out. It's called "Why They Hate Trump" or something, and he takes a wonderful stab at his microevolutionary reason why people hate Trump so much, and it essentially goes to. I talk about this related to the weather. Is that people? He's found that people with basically the four seasons temperate zones, where you have four distinct seasons, have a higher IQ.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because one of the determining factors of IQ is the ability for delayed gratification or patience. Okay, and if you have a winter, okay, which you have to prepare for, like if you like the Eskimos, okay, they only have winter, okay, and they have no resources. So that's a different story. But if you're in a situation where you have a winter which you have to prepare for, you have to look into the future, and you have to think, oh my goodness, if I don't prepare this winter, I'm going to have a consequence. So you actually have to have a higher IQ. You have to think. You have to maybe prepare winter crops. He was saying how the agricultural revolution is essential for human flourishing. It was one of the factors for human flourishing, because it allowed for people to go into different pursuits. Prior to the agricultural revolution, about 90+% of the human population was involved in farming. But once you were able to do the agricultural revolution, and he goes into this whole thing of, as the people with higher IQ were able to increase productivity on their land. Okay, and as they're able to increase productivity on their land, they're able to acquire more land. Okay, so let's say they're able to build a 2, 3, 4, 5 times yield compared to their neighbor. Okay, and because they're making such a surplus, they're able to sell, they're able to make some profit, then they're able to use that profit to reinvest, maybe buy the neighbor's land, and the neighbor thinks it can only yield, let's say, 100 crops, okay, or 100 bushels of wheat or whatever they're doing, right, corn. But since this guy knows productivity and he's used his intelligence and IQ to build a 5 times more productive crop, maybe he's raising the land, maybe he's burning and he's crop rotating. Maybe he's having winter crop rotations in, so using his IQ, he's able to boost productivity. So he buys the neighbor's land at a more expensive cost than the neighbor thinks, because the neighbor thinks he only can do 100 bushels. Okay, so he thinks that land is worth $100, for example. Right. But the guy who's buying it say, I'm going to give you $200. And he's like, oh, dang. I make $200, right? It's the neighbor's land. The neighbor wants to sell it because he's giving him like double the price. But the buyer, the guy who is buying it, knows that he can make 5 times. Right. He can make $500 on that land. Okay. So, anyways, he just continues to accrue, and by the free market, the agricultural revolution was necessary for the free market to actually start operating. He was going into in the medieval ages where there was really no free market to operate. Everybody's income was about the same. I mean, there was not huge disparities in wealth. And because of that, and because of Christianity, polygamy was not allowed. And so everybody had essentially one man, one wife, and you had access to a wife. You could get a wife, relatively easily. But as you had the agricultural revolution, as you had people using high IQ to increase productivity and then creating more wealth, more land, more wealth, the relative disparity between ownership started growing. The lower income people, the lower level landowners saw the middle class rising. And then they saw the people who use their IQ to produce even more productivity really skyrocketing, right? Those guys were starting to acquire 50 times, 100 times the land in a town. And so now that family had 100 times more than the regular person. And so now there's a tremendous amount of frustration because this person with lower IQ, this is what he's saying, a person with lower IQ is facing gene death. He's like, it's like literally, if he does not, and all the women are attracted to the man who has 100 acres of land now. okay, 100 times more land, because women are essentially, the reason why they're attracted to wealth is because, evolutionarily speaking, they're effectively handicapped because of pregnancy and childbirth and child rearing for the majority of their life since they're teens upwards. So they're essentially handicapped. They're dependents. They essentially need somebody to fund their life, provide for them, which is the reason why women like lust after men with money. Okay, just like men want a woman that is beautiful because those are signs of healthy genes, for example. But anyways, this is all happening subconsciously and unconsciously. Okay, so there's this disparity in wealth. There's all the women or the sexual market value of these men increase, and the sexual market value of these men with lower IQ is decreasing. They're almost facing gene death because now all the women go to the wealthy man. Of course, Christianity tells even the wealthy man do not have more than one wife. So it helps curb that desire to make a harem, okay, or something like that, which was always the case in medieval eras, etc. But so this wealth disparity happens, and so there's this feeling of, wow, even though that person at the lower rung of society is still living pretty well, he can still eat, he can still do everything because all rising tides lift all boats. He doesn't feel that way. He doesn't feel that way. He looks at the guy who has so much more than him and says, damn, that's like ridiculous. My sexual market value is dropping, and I can get no dates. You know what I mean? I'm facing gene death. So literally every single gene in his body and cell in his body is saying, hurry up, you've got to reproduce, otherwise you're going to die. Your blood gene set is going to die. Okay, so literally it's like this existential fight or flight mechanism, and then you get the politician that comes in, right? Or you get the wolf that comes in and says, hey, you know what? The reason why there's this gap, the reason why he's richer than you is because he's stealing from you. He's stealing from you, see? Has nothing to do with IQ. It has nothing to do that he was more productive on his agricultural land and then used that resource to create surplus and then buy more land. Has nothing to do with that. It's, he's stealing from you.
That's happening in South Africa right now.
Absolutely. And so these people who are existentially in crisis mode, panic mode, their genes subconsciously are in gene death panic mode. It's like facing a predator or a wolf or something. You're that scared that you're going to die off. They start listening to that type of socialism. Say, yeah, let's get the power of the state to forcefully take what's theirs and give it to me. Yeah. And that's not immoral because they're justifying it as, well, that guy's immoral. He's stealing from me. Or the guy with the factory is stealing from me because, we're all the same. And Stefan Molyneux goes into the Pareto principle, which says that the square root of any given population creates 50% of the productivity or the wealth. That is to say, if there's 100 people, 10% of the people will create 50% or more of the wealth. Yeah. If there's 10,000 people, 100 people will create 50% of the wealth. And leftists hate that. Socialists hate that because they want to believe everybody's same, everybody has equal productivity, equal IQ, et cetera, which is not true. Yeah. So what he was saying is that when you look at the statistics on IQ, and IQ has a direct correlation to wealth generation, okay, you will see that people in the 4 season zones have the highest IQ, like the Europeans, the Jews.
There's a lot more problem solving going on with 4
seasons.
A
lot 4 seasons. Also Asians. Asians are also in 4 season areas. East Asians. In 4. Now, when you go to the more tropical climates, you have fruit on the trees all the time. Right. So you're not in existential crisis mode. Your gene set is not going to die off. There's no winter to prepare for. Right. So there's no real future planning that has to be done. I mean, generally speaking, right? And so thus you can just relax. You can relax.
It's a very relaxed culture.
It's a relaxed, it's not as productive.
Right.
Okay, because there's not a lot of delayed gratification. If you're hungry, just go to pick some bananas or whatever fruits are growing on or whatever, And so, I really, anyways, the point is, he goes into this whole thing about it. He believes, he says statistically, you can't raise IQ, so it grieves his heart. He says, I feel terrible about it because he's not racist. He wants to improve the IQ of people in tropical climates or Africa, whatever. Africans generally have a low IQ compared to other countries. I mean, on the IQ scale. So he's like, I don't think you can raise it. Statistics show that you really can't raise IQ. And that's why people call him a racist and all this stuff. Even though statistically, you can invest more in education. You can give them higher quality educations and stuff like that. But they can't improve their IQ. That it's pretty much stable. Now, we were talking about it last night. I don't think that's true. I think if you had peace militia training,
If you create stress.
yes, you can increase IQ 100%. Why? Because what you're doing is you're not increasing book knowledge.
Right.
Okay, you're increasing your instinctual fight or flight mechanism.
Right.
You're actually stimulating your fight or flight instinctual motor memory. So, for example, I was telling my boys and the Queen, you guys, they've trained under me for now 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. If I threw them down on the ground, their mind wouldn't have to work. I mean, they wouldn't have to think about anything. If I threw them down on the ground, they would immediately go into fight mode, and they would start doing jujitsu immediately. Immediately. I mean, without thinking. Mm-hmm. Even this boy right here, young Pyo, you throw him on the ground, he'll immediately go into jujitsu mode and defensive mode.
Yeah.
If you start punching them, they're not just going to be shocked by getting punched. They're going to start defending immediately. Okay? And this type of fighting art trains you in delayed gratification. Okay? If you freak out, if you start crying, if you start trying to do this and that when somebody's mounted you or on side control, and you start getting frustrated, you are going to destroy your own self. Okay? You have to delay your gratification. You have to wait for timing. You have to make sure you have trained and worked hard. One of the other aspects of IQ, apparently, is the ability to work hard, to be industrious. Okay, and so you have to work hard. You got to get beat up a lot. You got to drive through with a lot of stress, and you have to do tons of delayed gratification and patience in stress and suffering, and with somebody dominating you. And neurosis is also a part of a high IQ, and women have a very high frequency of neurosis. Women statistically have a tendency to neurotically focus on something and then get anxious about it. And that's why women have generally a higher level of anxiety than men. They actually have a higher level of neurosis. And that's actually good, evolutionarily speaking, because you can take care of a baby and keep it cleaner than a man who can't hyperfocus on stuff and can't feel anxiety about a little poo on the leg. You know what I'm saying? But that poo may get into a cut and become an infection, or or whatever. So women, because they developed that type of evolutionary neurosis, so that would increase the child survival rate.
Right.
While the men had to curb neurosis, and they had to work together in teams as packs to hunt and gather for their evolutionary survival. Okay, so they didn't develop that type of neurosis. They developed sort of a focused, goal-oriented mindset, and that's why men generally have that character. But it's an interesting discussion. I don't think that's true because Brazilians are the ones who developed all this fighting art from the ground. They developed this whole science from the ground. Of course, it's developing. Obviously, jiu-jitsu has developed as it comes to the west and come up north. It's incorporated a lot more wrestling. Now the whole leg lock systems are in. So from Russia and all that combined, but I mean, he's not saying that nobody in Brazil or nobody in Africa can be productive and or has IQ. Obviously, you have a range within any population, but he's saying generally, the IQ level generally is very low for people in tropical climates. It's much lower than Nordic regions or places where you have to face a winter. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is interesting.
So it's not all climate, obviously, but it's also something, it's not all environment. It also has to do with genetics as well. But evolutionary speaking, people who lived in a 4 climate zone have a higher level IQ. Okay. I think when the kingdom comes and peace militia training is for everybody everywhere, because everybody's now developing a sense of self-defense. Everybody's developing a sense of proper amygdala function. Everybody's brain capacity is increasing.
Right.
Their fight or flight mechanism is starting to change because they're not going to freak out.
Yeah.
They're not going to panic as much as somebody who's not trained. They're not going to have fear as their factor when they feel anxious. Okay. they're going to be able to emotionally control. And we were talking with the Queen yesterday. Girls who train, and all the girls who train, seriously, they completely change. They don't become. They're not as neurotic. They're not as neurotic. Girls before the training, they're very neurotic. Some of the girls have that character of being even more neurotic than other girls. Very, very heavy neurotic, very, very emotional, very, very nitpicky, very, 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 how do you say, chansory? A lot of nagging. The Queen wasn't like that, but there's other girls that are like that. But through the training, they become self-aware. They learn patience. They learn hard work. They learn to stop complaining. They learn don't be neurotic about stupid stuff. They learn to think. You have to think through problems. You have to problem solve. You have to wait for timing.
Right.
You have to practice your technique very hard. And you have to use your brain to solve problems. And that's why women who train these kind of combat arts generally they become like a different species. I mean, they become totally different from untrained neurotic women. And again, neurosis is actually a healthy thing, evolutionary speaking, because it helps you hyper-focus on a baby and keep it surviving for the first couple of years of its life.
The brain is a huge muscle. And,
It's a very big muscle.
You know, in the Four Seasons and farming and all the things you're talking about, jiu-jitsu, you know, you exercise that muscle. You constantly are situationally exercising it. You have to be almost like an engineer every day to figure out problem solve.
No, exactly right.
And that, you know, if you do that on a daily basis through your environment, you're just going to be more sharp, I would imagine. I mean, that makes
no question.
total sense to me.
No question. And you're also shaping your instinctual behavior. So like school learning, you're not necessarily shaping your instinctual behavior. You still have to learn, you know, you have to. But with this type of fighting arts, you're shaping your instinctual behavior. Like you don't have to think and immediately it's like riding a bike, right?
Yeah.
You don't, once you learn how to do it, it's like when you go this way, you catch it. And you go, oh shoot, you catch yourself. It's instinctual motor memory. So you're actually training your motor memory, instinctual fight or flight mechanism to react in a different way than if you're not trained, okay? I'll give you one example. The Queen is training, since she's training all these combat martial arts, one time it was very icy one day. She went out there and she almost took a huge spill. But she went, whoa, and she was able to, whoop, what you catch herself. And she would never have been able to do it. She would just literally have flopped on the ground, and I'd have to go out and pick her up. But she's developed a much more balanced motor memory, instinctual body system now. That is able to cope with, you know, equilibrium, disequilibrium. You know, when things are not in equilibrium. She's able to cope with that, but she didn't do that consciously. She did it subconsciously. Okay, so that means her instinctual motor memory, basically fight or flight mechanism, is able to operate in productive ways because she's getting trained. And of course, just as a woman, she's much less filled with anxiety, much less neurotic. She wasn't even really neurotic to begin with, but you know, generally women have a higher level of neurosis. She still did have some neurosis, which is healthy because then it helped her hyper-focus on the babies, but then it would lead to nagging. And of course, she was trained out of that. But the point is, when women get that physical fighting training, I always say they transform, they completely become different people. And you can see it with all the girls who's trained, all the girls who's got the King's training, they have become totally different people. I'm not saying they're perfect or something. Don't get arrogant, okay, girls. But they've changed. They've changed. I could throw any one of those girls who train down on the ground, or some bad guy could throw them on the ground. They can immediately start fighting. Immediately start fighting back. Immediately. I mean, it's not even a thought. It's not even like they're gonna wait for the situation. It's gonna immediately they're gonna be up in guard mode. Immediately. They're gonna be kicking back. They're gonna be, you know what I mean? Immediately they're gonna be in attacking mode. Okay? So Stefan Molly believes that you can't change or increase IQ. I disagree. They're looking at studies where you're sending them to college or you're sending them to get some education program, which is okay if it's helpful. But that's all book learning, brain knowledge, which is important. It's important. It's not nothing. But with that, you can't really increase IQ. Okay. How did IQ increase in the beginning in the Nordic regions and the Four Seasons anyways?
Yeah.
It didn't increase by book knowledge. It increased by the instinctual fight or flight mechanism having to face existential death. So the increase in IQ in the four season temperate zone areas had it increased microevolutionarily by the fight or flight mechanisms being stressed, and then them creating a motor memory skill set that then would reflect their more productive and future planning systems that they developed in the four season areas. It happened because they were stimulating the fight or flight system. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I believe that through this type of military training, and I'm sure there's future studies going to happen on this as the kingdom comes, that IQ can increase because we all started from Adam and Eve. I mean, there's no real difference between a human being that lives in Africa and the Nordic four season regions, other than thousands of years of microevolution, of having their fight or flight system, gene death system getting stimulated. And if you're able to do that with PPP military training over time, I think all the different nations will be able to have increases in IQ. All of them. And they will have better increases in delayed gratification, industriousness, the control over neurosis, things like this. And it will just lead to a more productive world.
Yeah, and even the study, the brain study, academics increases with physical stress and exercise.
That's very
There's
true.
been studies
Very true.
been done on that. If you're only studying with no physical exercise,
Oh my gosh.
it's not healthy. But
It's really not healthy.
yeah, much healthier if you combine the two together.
Yeah.
The training and academic learning.
Absolutely. No question about it. I just think that these libertarians are wrong on that aspect because I train people myself physically. They don't. I mean, they're more nerdy. They're more like intellectual. I'm very intellectual too, but I've always been training in these physical arts, which are you have to use your mind a lot. You have to use your physicality a lot, but you have to use your mind a lot too.
Right.
And you can't be you can't be dumb. You have to learn all the traits that increase IQ. And I would say all the kids that train, their IQ has increased. I mean, they used to be like dumb bums, like little jellyfish playing video games all day. The boys, oh my gosh, like pathetic Asian.
What's going to happen to the IQ with all this video games playing in 100 years from now?
It drops. But you had all these jellyfish little troglodyte little, skinny little Asian boy. Why don't any girls attracted to me? I'm playing don't they see I can beat all the monsters in my video game? I mean, it's like, yeah, you expect a girl to be attracted to you, dumb bum. You know what I'm saying? And then you got all the girls who are neurotic and always, wanting to nag and like, ready to, control men. And they were brainwashed with feminism too. But as they trained, that gets killed. I mean, because feminism is just fantasyland. They see the difference between men and women strength-wise. All the girls realize that it's not bullshit. Men has 7 to 23 times more steroids in their body, testosterone, which acts as a steroid. 7 to 23 times the steroid level in their body, okay? Just to compare, just to give you a comparison, male sports, men's sports, they ban steroids, right? But steroids can only make a man 4 times stronger than his competitor. Okay, so there's a 4-time different level in testosterone with a man who does not use steroids to a man who does use steroids. But with a normal man, a normal boy who's hit puberty, like skinny little video game boy, that little skinny video game boy compared to the average woman has 7 times more testosterone. Just for the fact that he has a penis and has balls. So it makes a huge difference in physical strength. That would absolutely be banned in sports, right? To have a 7 times steroid increase, right? It'd be huge. It's a huge gap. And that's why, for example, little skinny boys, I mean, girls think they're weak, but if they're not in combat arts, they think that skinny boys are just wimps. But when they do combat arts, they realize they have to respect even skinny little twig boys. I mean, look at that boy. He's a skinny little twig. But he's got 7 times the testosterone or steroids than a normal girl. So they may think that he looks like a wimp. But, you know what I'm saying? But in terms of their thinking, they don't realize the strength difference. Now, when you deal with a stronger masculine man, they may have 23 times the level of testosterone, than the average girl. So then you're fighting against somebody who's literally 23 times stronger than you. it's like good luck. You're dead. You're dead meat. You know what I mean? And there's just no comparison. And that's why they divide.
Transgender sports are a joke.
It's a joke. All the men are stealing the women's.
They're getting all the first place awards.
The girls get their sports stolen away.
Right.
And who's trying to protect it? It's the men to say,
Right.
come on. But, these girls who live brainwashed by feminism, they just want to believe that there's no difference physically.
Right.
Because they see skinny boys like that, or skinny boys like Asian, whatever, and they think there's no difference. There's a huge difference in the amount of force that can be generated. So, anyways, the point is, the girls get broken out of feminism and delusion because they have to fight each other, and they realize, oh man, it's hard to fight a girl who's fighting back. And then that girl who they thought was tough just gets slaughtered by a skinny boy, and they're like, crap. And I thought I was a tough ass, I was a tough girl. No, they realize very quick that they are physically weaker than men. So they realize feminism is a joke and it's a lie. It's a complete lie. And that there are differences between the sexes, and physical differences really matter. They really, 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 really matter. Physical differences are the differences in surviving or not surviving. Okay? Men, of course, change a lot too, because if they're brainwashed, dumbed down video game boys, soy boy, latte boys or whatever, they learn how to fight back. They learn how to not just imagine themselves in fantasy land and pretend like they're being an alpha male in a pack fighting. They actually learn how to be a part of a pack that's learning to do combat. Okay? They get their booties beat up. They cry a lot in the beginning because they start getting punched in the face, and they start, getting choked and submitted, and they just give up at first, and they're just, depressed because they thought they were tough. They thought they could beat up their elder brother, whatever it is. But they break out of delusion too. So I believe that through the blessing that True Father gave us and that Christ gave us about Peace Police, Peace Militia, that is local. The local level is responsible for their own security and safety. That means local police, local military. Everybody's part of the police. All citizens are part of the military. It's a sheriff deputy type of system in the kingdom of God, where everybody's responsible for one another and loves God, loves thy neighbor. And also women train too. Women also train. And I just hearken back to the 1966 through 67 Orlando statistics, where in Orlando, Florida, women were required to receive a pistol training. And they saw the crime rate, the sex assault against women. Only in Orlando, by the way. All Florida remained the same, but only Orlando, that the sheriff required all women to get gun training. An 88% drop in sexual assault. Give me a break, okay?
How can evil cannot thrive in that
Can't
environment?
thrive.
Yeah.
When all the girls are trained, they're less neurotic, they're better human beings, and bad guys can't rape them.
Yeah.
88% drop in sexual assault. No change in no other Florida county had changed. Okay, they had consistently high levels of rape. So, Peace Police, Peace Militia not only creates a better society, it not only creates a safer society for men and women, it creates a smarter society. It creates a higher IQ society, a more deferred gratification learned society. A society that becomes more industrious. From a young age, you've tested your fight or flight system. It creates a higher IQ society. It creates a society that is not based on fear, that is not based on fight or flight. Okay, that can transcend the fight or flight mechanism through training the fight or flight mechanism and increasing your motor memory instinctual level skills so that you don't freak out and you don't immediately fall into a fight or flight mechanism and then fall into jealousy and then want to go into socialism to steal resources and give it to yourself. You can calm down. You can relax. And also, in Peace Police, Peace Militia training, Even the people from rich families have to send their kids to train. You see what I'm saying? So those kids won't see, the blue collar worker as somebody lower because they're training partners. They're training together. They're working together. They're friends together. They know that blue collar workers generally will be stronger. So those are actually very good training partners, and you will respect those kind of people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you'll already respect them physically, and as training partners, you'll want to train with them because they're physically more challenging. Okay, and you'll value them, and vice versa. The people from rich families, since they're training with blue collar workers, that kids, they're not that bad. They're not. I train with them. So it'll eliminate a lot of the jealousy factor between the camps,
The
class warfare, because everybody has to train together. Everybody's training together.
And a huge amount of respect is
Tremendous
learned.
respect. Because even though you're rich or poor, you can still break legs
Right.
and break arms and choke and punch people out if you understand these arts. And then also you'll be training knife fighting together. So you'll have to you'll learn, wow, I got to respect one another. You know what I mean? You'll also be training firearms training together, which will build the level of trust even closer, because it's the highest level martial art. So Peace Police Militia will do so much to build a more intelligent, a more instinctually motor memory wise and intelligent society. And it'll increase people's amygdala function, so they're not all dumb sheep just eating grass. They're aware sheepdog. They're aware. You see what I'm saying? They're aware. Generally, the population will become way more aware. They will be able to carry weapons on them to deter crime and criminality. They will be able to fight crime at a higher level. They will not panic as much. They will be more industrious because they've learned the value of hard work. They will not complain and bitch and cry when things don't turn out well. Because from a young age, they've done very hard training and got beaten up a lot, which makes you tougher. There's studies on that. People who have been bullied a lot actually become more productive because it makes you tough. It toughens your skin, so to speak, because you've been in business many years. I mean, basically you're in competition with other businesses that are trying to kill you. They're trying to kill you. They're trying to put you out of business. So if you've been bullied a lot, you have a tougher skin, okay, and you're used to that competition. And if you fail, so what? You can still get up again and try again, and so you will have a generally more intelligent society. I don't agree. I think the libertarians are looking at when they say you can't raise IQ, they're looking at book knowledge. I'm not looking at that as the real knowledge, because IQ itself was raised by stressing the fight or flight mechanism. That's how it was raised, microevolutionary. So if you can stress it through Peace Police Militia, you can give it that healthy stress load on a consistent basis over a span of many years, a couple of years, and everybody has to receive that training. You will create an increase in IQ, because that's how IQ increased in the first place. Okay, so I'm not just making this up. I'm speaking rationally. Okay.
Well, Father's whole life was putting himself in stressful situations.
Oh my gosh! I mean, look at all the conservatives. They love when I tell them, Father at 92 years old was open sea fishing. Open sea fishing with freaking 20-foot waves. Who does that at 92 years old?
Yeah.
You know how dangerous that is? I mean, not only is it dangerous, it's physically taxing to be on a freaking commercial ship. That's what, they smell like chum. They're not clean. It's not a yacht, okay?
Not a luxury yacht.
It's not a luxury yacht. It's a freaking commercial boat that has blood all over it and chum everywhere. And you're walking with these high boots, you know what I'm saying? It's like Alaska crab fishing. And you're on these boats with 20-foot swells. It's like, and they don't end. It's just, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. But at 92 years old, my gosh, all the guys who hunt, fish, trap, fight, all these guys, they love it. They're like, wow, God bless him, God bless him. And we were trying to tell these stories to liberals who think the hardest thing to do is go to Starbucks and drink a caramel macchiato. I mean, give me a break. They're like, why would he do such a thing like that? It's so disgusting. I need some sushi now. Okay. He was commercial fishing. They don't empathize with the life of commercial fishermen. So, I need my sushi now. More wasabi, please. Okay. Excuse me. This sushi is undercooked. These liberals, they're the ones that you're trying to impress with the stories of father on the boat and hunting and fishing.
You got to change the narrative.
Golly, they're going to think he's a nutbag.
Yeah,
He's like,
right.
why wasn't he eating his sushi? Okay. I mean, it's like, this is the problem with all these archangels. These stupid Korean leaders like the Kwaks and the Boks, they all were archangelic. They all wanted communism. You know what I'm saying? They all went to North Korea like, oh yes, it's the wonderful system, and if only they change and take and respect Reverend Moon, then it will be beautiful. What? What did you just say? I mean, you lunatic! You lunatic! They're basically totalitarians. And father was never influenced by, impacted by it because the way he constantly, decentralized everything, got rid of the church, so to speak, and make coalition of families. That doesn't mean there was no more church. I mean, he still wanted people to go to service, learn scripture together, community, etc. But just organizationally, he would break up the power between different members. I mean, leaders. Mm-hmm. You name it. He would always do things like training, and he would tell all members to come. So not only the elite members could come, he told everybody to come, and they had to come to his hundoke, they had to go fishing with him, you name it. Okay, so he would always be training with the local folks. Mm-hmm. The, quote, peasant class that the archangels saw everybody as, right? And I'm telling you, it was such a different culture because Father actually afforded you a lot of freedom. If he gave you responsibility, he didn't meddle in your style of leadership. Mm. He would let you perform like Donald Trump, right? If he trusts you enough to hire you, yeah, he allows you to bring your skill set to the table, right? He doesn't micromanage you, for example, and which Shahan Mother does. She's very neurotic, but Father was not. He was not neurotic. He would let you operate how you did. But it's amazing because they're trying to brag about Father doing all this being an outdoorsman and hunting and fishing and killing wild boars and going open sea fishing at 92. The liberals think that's disgusting, even though they love sushi. I mean, they think they're like, oh my God, why would you do that? They're so elitist because they're commies. In the end, who crave elitism and they want a 99% serf class neo-feudalism to live under them. But the people who are not commie freaks and socialist freaks, they respect people who do that because they themselves love industrious people. They themselves love people who can suck it up and take a little stress load. But for a good reward, be patient in hunting and get beat up by the snow and the rain, all that, but just to catch that animal. You have to show patience. Going open sea fishing, not in tropical Florida or something, but in very bad, cold areas. I mean, that's pretty badass in terms of the outdoorsmen. And, they're the ones who can understand Father. They're the ones, the NRA guys, the GOA guys, the gun guys, the outdoorsmen. These are the folks that can understand Father's lifestyle and respect him on that level of man to man, And of course they all wish that Christ was that kind of man, because he was. I mean, look at Christ at his first coming. He was attracting fishermen. He was attracting blue-collar workers. He was attracting people of outcast status. He was hanging out with tax collectors and harlots. I mean, and of course fishermen. A lot of fishermen joined him as well. So he was around people that were with the local people. Okay, the blue collar worker. And Father was the same way as well. He was the same way. So I think that women's IQ also changes. Their sexual preferences, I think, also change. As they train peaceably military training, they realize there's value to a blue-collar worker. They don't only see his level of resources. They also can value him if he's a strong physical man, they can value that strong physicality for their survival and as a potential training partner. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I absolutely believe that you can raise IQ because that's how IQ was raised in the first place, microevolutionarily speaking, by stressing the fight or flight load. And you can do that in a similar way by having people experience the fight or flight mechanism on a daily basis through hard physical fighting combat training. Okay, and that's why Father said it's martial arts and combat martial arts specifically are essential for young people in their education. Father was a wrestler. He was a wrestler from a young age. He wrestled, right?
And he established an international martial arts
league.
League, yeah.
He did. But for a young age, even the stories in North Korea when he was growing up, he was a champion wrestler.
He would take on the bullies.
He would beat up the bullies with wrestling. And it wasn't Greco-Roman wrestling, but it was Shidoman. That's still a very tough type of wrestling. It's like a type of sumo wrestling that you do on sand. So it definitely makes you tough. I mean, not all boys do it. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be one of the alpha males.
There's one of those stories where he got beat up by a bully and he kept training,
That's right,
went
that's
back
right.
and he beat him.
He beat up the bully. He beat up the bullies with grappling. So Father was a grappler, which is the reason why probably when I started showing him jiu-jitsu and started UFC, he fell in love with it. Because at a young age, he was also a grappler.
Yeah.
He was also a fighter who would beat up bullies and take on, evil guys, you know. So, I mean, that's any man who's an outdoorsman, that's how you want your Messiah to be.
That's right.
You want him to be a wrestler who beat up bullies and is an outdoorsman and is a hunter and a fisherman and somebody who's trying to empower people and a gun owner. You want your Messiah to be that way. I mean, that's a cool Messiah for conservatives. Think about it. That's a cool Messiah. That's a dope Messiah. That's like a Messiah. Yeah, that's my father. You know what I mean? That's how you want your dad to be. So that's the type of Messiah that everybody's dreaming of, not liberals. Okay, because they want a George Soros Messiah. They want somebody who will centralize power to themselves, allow for child pedophilia and all this kind of crap. No, not a father.